These are the 4 plans.
Okay, so we should probably, well, let's wait until the
Oh, sorry.
appointed time. No, it's all right. You get settled in, but I don't want to get the plans mixed up. I'll do one thing. You want to start plan?
Yeah, and Cheryl told me I had to keep them very, very clean, so she wrapped it in plastic.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
I thought I'd collect all the old ones.
I'd rather put in one.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh,
I think this is the first time we've all been together. Long time. It must have been my persistence.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
Simple ones, but. We like the easy ones.
All right.
We'll just give it a few more minutes. Anyone has a joke they want to tell?
I can probably pass them over. That's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have a ton.
All right.
Said we had to keep one very, very clean.
That's actually a good one, but yeah. Still better.
Hi. Nice to have you. How are your kids?
Good, oh good, how about?
They're grown,
Yeah,
grown, but never out from under. kind
You
of.
ever know more?
Yeah, no,
I know exactly what you mean. Especially one or two in the morning.
Yeah, I have one that really likes to short shorts. One of these was the original pre-recorded, and I don't remember.
Who's been original e-signature?
This looks to be original.
Jeez, that was what she had to stick
Yeah,
on.
this is the original.
Is there a sticker on it?
Oh, is that the
You can
original?
tell it's a wet signature, you can tell.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I'm just one of them.
Yeah, well, I just, Cheryl said
Yep.
she had to stick on it, and I didn't.
Yeah, we're just, chair provides the assurance.
Yeah, well, you guys can look at it, but
Look but don't touch.
Yeah, no
Right,
crayons.
I start drawing on it. so. Now, do you have 2 seconds after it goes over, Tom?
mhm.
How about not this? Is that clear?
Sidebar.
Sidebar.
That- Non-related,
Yeah.
unrelated sidebar.
That's why we're not in the meeting right now, so that's fine. Conversation amongst people.
Can we do it in 75 seconds?
No, probably not.
Is this the only thing on the agenda tonight?
We have a couple of housekeeping
Okay.
issues, but yeah, this is the only application before the board, yeah. All right, why don't we get started? So thank you all for joining the July meeting of the Rollinsford Planning Board. In attendance, we have Kevin Haynes, Mike Rollo, John Krebs, our consultant, Glenn Chase, alternate, Sarah, our secretary, an intrepid secretary, Carolyn Kendall, also an alternate, Patrick Alley, and John Hinsman. And me, Miles England, the chair. The first item on the agenda is Madeline and William Campbell, 195 Clement Road, a proposed lot line adjustment. So why don't you just walk us through what you're proposing to do?
We have sold, we moved our lot line over 50 feet, and we sold the rest of the lot to Mark Wentworth and Suzanne Wentworth. That's it.
That's
It's pretty cut and dry.
so you,
And the monuments, they did the certificate.
It's not as cut and dry. You forgot one section of
What?
it. There's another lot here. So this is 3 lots of record.
they're eliminating a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, they're
Oh,
only-
I forgot
Yeah.
that part. All right, yeah, we're eliminating our
Yeah.
lot.
Yep.
And they are going to, we are absorbing our 50 feet, they're absorbing their feet. That's it. And I have certificate of monumentation, Kevin came through, the first people came through, and we have granite monuments now.
Excellent, thank you. John, did you want to talk us through your technical?
Yeah, my first comment was that I wanted, the first plan, and of course we put it away now so you can't see it, but it wasn't really showing that this lot was being eliminated. So if you look at the middle of the plan, it says that map 146 1-2 is being eliminated, and there's a note over here, note 5, that says that as well, so that's good. Number 2 is the same comment. 3, that Kevin has to sign the final plans, which he's done. Somebody has that in front of them.
Yes.
Lenny Lord signed the final plans, I saw that. And then the last thing is that the certificate of monumentation, there's 2 bounds, there's a granite bound up on the front, the new front corner, and then an iron rod in the back
Yes.
that was set. And Kevin has signed a letter to that effect. That's all I have.
And I watched them do it.
Does anyone on the board have comments, questions, concerns?
Pretty straightforward.
All right. I think we are required to have a public hearing.
You are.
Okay, so at this point, I will open the public hearing and accept comments from the public. I don't see anyone. All right, why don't we go ahead and close the public hearing, maybe the fastest one on record. So first off, we should get a motion to accept
I'll
the,
move that we accept the application as complete.
thank you, sir.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor of accepting that motion?
Aye.
Okay, I think the ayes have it. So I guess we can move right into, does anyone else have any points of clarification? All right. I think we can,
Just one question though, no standing growth is being altered in this, no trees, no stone walls,
No, our leach
not even
field.
mowing, right? It's a virtual.
Our leach field happens to be in the 50 feet. We were in the setbacks, and it's always been a dilemma for us what to do with that. So
Very good,
this
thank you.
solves our leach field. We are now on our own lot.
so your leach field was on the middle lot?
We didn't know, when we
Okay.
subdivided, nobody, I mean,
Okay.
we were pretty novice at this, and,
Okay.
yeah. And who would have thought that they would go that far over, but it's a big leach field,
Yep,
which is a good thing. But
okay.
that's it.
This was the lot that was between, that was next to your property that was for sale a
Mhm.
couple years ago.
Yeah. No, we never put it on the market. It never went.
I'm thinking the other side of it.
The other
Wasn't
side,
it?
this is
Just
the
other
one
side.
that Dustin bought, and then Dustin sold it to Mark Wentworth.
I got you,
That's the bigger lot,
I got you.
and he just wants to add to it. So it's a win-win.
Excellent. Any other comments? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve this plan before us.
Okay.
I'll second it. Third it, whatever.
You got that, Sarah? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none? You're good to go.
What are we gonna, how's this recording working now?
I'm doing,
I don't know, are you? What's the policy? I thought,
I was told not to do it.
okay,
Yeah, well, that's what's been happening.
okay. I
Um,
thought we changed that.
We haven't officially changed.
Okay.
I think that's a point of
Okay.
conversation.
We're gonna have part of that conversation, I think, tonight.
Yeah. Yes, I hope so.
He's a current owner.
I'm a realtor, I've done this before. I
We've
know
had
how
a
to
horrible
do it.
problem with people not recording, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, you want that for the record?
so,
Hi. Hi. Hi, let me call you back, we're in a meeting, okay? Bye. See what I mean, John?
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
so
Keeping an eye on her.
this guy signed. I can sign the others if you want. I mean, that's the one
Yeah, I
you-
guess, because I'm gonna give one to Mark,
Okay.
and then we'll keep one, right? So, yeah,
Yep.
that would be good.
Probably two for the town, one for the
Send
seven.
it down, one to the second.
At least one. At
You didn't
least
get four
there's
copies, you
room
must
for
be
the
getting-
two, but at least one.
Here's my, yeah, my little plastic bag.
He's gonna sign it.
You think we go to Staples?
Third, for three.
Hmm? Yeah.
Just looking to make sure. It's Kevin,
Yeah.
as Bruce has Kevin Ward.
Two,
Or keeping two.
and one's going back to the one.
You don't have an official stamp that you put on this?
That's it right there.
Kevin, can I take a second one over here?
This is, this,
That's it?
that's the
Okay.
official stamp.
I think I got all of them.
So that's two for the town, and then Wentworth will sign, and that will, sign the original.
How many
We should keep.
We're
Those two
keeping
are for the
three.
town.
We're keeping three, one for the
Two for
assessor.
town.
Okay, this one, where's this one going?
Right. Two
I've
for
got
the town,
two- I've got two
and one for the
here.
assessor.
So let's
No,
go
we
with
got
that.
enough, like two is good.
Good. Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you, thank you. And of course, it'll be recorded tomorrow, so.
Let's leave it that way.
Do you wanna take a quick, I guess you can step away.
So that you can see
Yeah.
Talk amongst yourselves, I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Warm.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
See you guys again. Yeah, take care.
Definitely. We should get together sometime. I'd love to hear your stories. We got
We'll
ours.
go one time.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. You got it.
Can I take one of those? Before
So we did get meeting minutes. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to review
I
them.
apologize, because they were
I did have a chance to review them.
simply.
Well, I mean, they came in today,
Yeah.
you know. But well before the meeting, you want me to try and properly review them.
They weren't long, they were super short meetings.
Do people feel like they're in a position to approve the minutes, or do you want time to review it? I'll give you a few minutes to do it on your.
I had to do it on my phone.
Okay. I don't think we heard the plan, did we? No, it's just on. It's stupid.
If you just make a pass, actually, I'll put the others.
How's your dad? Keeping busy?
He's actually, this is the first year he hasn't mowed the lawn. He'll be 92 on the 17th. Yeah.
No, he can take this summer.
Why is he so lazy?
Is he gonna vote next year?
But that was always his escape, to get out there and put the,
But of course, he has a
Here,
riding lawn,
protection on.
riding lawn mower.
yeah, it's just the bags.
You don't come between me and his lawn and his riding lawn mower.
Not him.
You just don't.
Oh, and that,
It's
that,
ill-advised.
that brown grass this year is just not cutting it, so I don't think it's getting him as excited.
We were on the wrong end of the cycle.
I mean, I'm not you too. I know, but I just have a list.
Oh, all right.
It's even less.
Rookie over here, right? Immediately going, put me on your
Really?
mailing list.
Wait,
Hello.
wait a minute.
Wow.
It's okay.
Right here up.
Whoa.
All right, and when we're ready, okay, I don't, do we approve them month by month?
Yeah, you have some.
Okay, so why don't we talk about the May minutes?
Second?
As I read.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the May meeting minutes? Okay, and the June meeting minutes?
I'll make motion to approve this.
Awesome. All in favor? Alright. Not getting a whole lot of, yeah. Motion passes. Correspondence, so I did get an email just before the meeting. Find it.
Just about the storage.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure, is she looking for the? Okay, and we have a copy of those.
Did you respond?
I have not responded to her, and I was hoping you would.
Okay.
She just needs to come in here.
We need to plan a plan.
There's a folder.
Yeah, we need to plan a plan.
All right.
Okay,
So she or I will respond to
okay,
that person.
excellent. Okay. I didn't see any other correspondence in the planning room. So I think we're good there. So what else do we have to discuss? Policies and procedures, I think is.
One of them came up this evening.
Mm-hmm, yep, absolutely.
We've struggled with this off and on for at least the last several years that I've been sitting here. Who files for the registry? Well, it doesn't really. I mean,
That's an ongoing discussion, because I've heard people advise both ways.
yeah.
At this table, advise you may record, I mean, going back to milers versus, you know, okay, how many copies they should present.
I think it was Attorney Radigan suggested, and John has been suggesting for a while, the town should be doing it on behalf of the applicant.
Collect a fee for
We don't, and we collect the fee to cover our
Collect the
costs,
fee
of
for the
course.
service, you know,
That way we're guaranteed they're actually filed.
make us responsible.
Yeah. So the filing fee plus a fee for someone's time?
Well, I mean, yeah, the town shouldn't incur that cost, I
Right.
think, and, you know, that's maybe why the town may drag their feet, not drag their feet, but I understand it's a poorly written plan, but this is not anything we haven't discussed in the
Right.
past. You know.
We had a
debate.
plan in place, I think, for a while, and there was some personality issues, and it sort of fell by the wayside, and here we are again, so.
But there's no written policy?
Correct.
Okay.
There is a recording in town map update fee. Is that different?
Is that part of the fee schedule?
Mhm.
So it's called what again?
It's under notice and recording fee, and it's the recording in town map update fee.
And is
it's
that collected at time of application?
Yes.
As part of the bundle of fees we collect in advance?
It doesn't say, although that's interesting, because if they get denied, then you wouldn't record the
But it
plan.
would return fee.
But you don't hear fees, I mean, first of all, rarely is a plan denied. So, and I don't know any town that would return a fee if you were denied. A site plan wouldn't be subject to that fee. It'd be for updating your tax maps, I don't know who does it, is it cartographic?
Yeah.
Avatar.
Avatar, yeah. So, they probably aren't gonna charge you to have, I'm sure you have a
Well,
contract
it's
with
within our
them.
contract, yes.
So but there should be a recording fee in there. The only thing I will tell you is that Stratford isn't that bad to record plans on, but what we might wanna do is consider if the town is going to do them, and I think the town should record the plans, there should be some language in there that if for any reason the plan isn't able to be recorded on the first time, a second fee will be charged. Cause like in Rockingham County, the registry there is brutal. It might take you 3 times before you get a plan recorded. Stratford isn't so bad, but you know, it's probably, what, an hour and a half by the time you screw around getting over there?
I don't imagine that other towns, and I agree with you, and it should also have in their instructions that that recording fee will be returned if the plan is denied, which doesn't very often happen.
I guess you could put it in there. I've generally, you know, I've never seen a town return fees. But
What do you see typical in other towns, because you know more about that than we do?
a fee is charged.
It's recorded by the town? so
Yeah,
we're
oh
con-
yeah,
we're
I don't know
contracted
any towns, this is the first town I've ever worked with that has recorded their own fees.
with that, we need to follow the
Now, listen,
standard.
Madeline, I don't know her, but obviously you all do, she says she's a realtor. If she came in here, and I don't know who would record the plan at the town office, but if someone said, geez, we probably won't get to it until next
Right.
Friday, and she said, well, I gotta close.
Well, she's
I got
planning on
closing in
closing,
2 days, we
yes.
might say, okay, you can, in this case, you can record it. But I think the problem we have, we have had a few, is we record, we approve these things, they never get recorded. They're sort of in la-la land. So,
So in that case, do we update our tax map, but don't?
how do you update them if there's not a recorded plan?
You can't.
So it's sort of, it's odd. To my knowledge, it's only happened once, and I can't remember the details, but.
But for better accounting and administration within the town, if everything runs across our desks, then it'd be easier for us to maintain and keep everything updated and accurate. Transfer of ownership.
Well, the town will get when the plan is recorded, the town gets notice of it. So you get a booking page or a plan number sent to the town. But my issue is just that, years ago, when most towns required Mylars, some registries still required Mylars. The issue was, there were surveyors out there that would modify Mylars after they were signed by the planning board, and that was a big issue. So that's why towns would never let them out of their control. If it's a paper plan, the likelihood of modifications being made are pretty slim. But nevertheless, my issue is not a trust issue, it's more, if we take the time to review it, approve it, I wanna know it's recorded. So, I just think it makes sense. And again, if a situation like this comes in, she says, I have a closing, or whatever, can I get it done? You could say, well, we trust you, please get it
Well,
done.
the onus is on her, she's the only one that would benefit or suffer from the failure to follow through.
But we went through a lengthy review, and I can't remember where the heck it was, but
I remember it.
it was
now
a
that
2
you-
or 3 lot subdivision, or, I can't remember what the last name it was. And they never recorded the plan. And then they wanted to revoke it, and we were like, well, how do you revoke it? We never got to.
Never actually.
Well, it got approved, but it never got recorded, so it was, and I can't remember the name. So if we're, both John Radigan and I agree that you really ought to be recording plans.
Well, what would it take for us to do that? I mean, we'd have to run before town meeting to
No,
change that? It
This is
really
the
wouldn't.
problem, we can just change the planning board policy.
But then we gotta, we've gotta do it, we've gotta have people to do it. So, and you guys know the internal administration of the town way better, I mean, what do you,
So
what's your
once
opinion?
upon a time, the tax collector was authorized and agreed to record on behalf of the planning board before the personality conflict made that not workable.
Meaning that, but the town employee did that.
The agreement was she would get like a stipend per trip to do
See, I think
that.
that's a great idea.
It
Why did we
also
not
was-
do that?
Well, it just fell away. But it's a really good idea because she's the one who manages the
Right.
mapping with Avatar. And so she needs to know what happens directly when it happens. So that would help that
The
communication.
select board should have another conversation with her.
It wasn't that tough, what are we talking about, 3 or 4 trips a year? I mean, but this
It's
isn't
not
Dover.
much.
She's
It's not very
going
often.
Every other week.
It wasn't very often, it wasn't the number of trips, it was, she just felt mistreated by certain personalities.
Okay.
Just leave it at that.
But we all agree this is the best way to handle it through the town and making sure that these things actually happen. Just because we approve it doesn't happen until that stamp is on at the registry. It affects lots and deeds and ownership, so. And we've talked about this
So
enough
if
time.
we
why don't
wanna,
just
if we
do
wanna
it?
come up with
Let's just do it.
a proposal, we'll say that, it would be a case by case, it wouldn't be once a week or once a month, it would, if we're not approving things that often, or maybe we will start doing it, who knows?
We haven't yet. It
Right.
hasn't
Well,
been rag
exactly,
tag
right.
run into the
So,
registry by any means.
I think, well, right, exactly, so my suggestion then would be until such time as the business really picks up, if it ever does, we just do it on a case-by-case basis and ask the tax collector
As
to
needed.
go over and do it as needed.
As needed.
So perhaps the tax collector could discuss it with the board when she's coming in
Correct.
soon anyway.
That would be wonderful if we made a
And maybe if
note
someone,
and added it to the agenda, so certain absent-minded select board members don't forget. That'd be helpful, thank you.
we're really gonna change this, huh?
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, if the rest of the planning board's amenable to it, I think we
Well, it's no
definitely
workload
should
on
be
my
doing
part,
it.
I mean, really. Right.
Well, it's not gonna cost the town anything, because her time will be covered by the fee, right? We gotta figure out what the
You
fee
asked
is
her
next,
nicely.
to make sure
You
the
asked
fee
her
is
nicely.
actually,
Right, exactly. What does the
The right
county
amount,
charge?
I mean.
I mean, we're not starting any
What does the county charge?
personnel wars or anything
Well,
by
we
asking
gotta-
someone nicely.
What we gotta do is, and I don't know how Stratford does it, but they probably, what we probably gotta do is say, you gotta, whoever the applicant is has to provide 2 checks. I think they want one for the, what's the fee?
The recording fee, the L-chip fee.
The L-chip fee and then one for the recording fee. So we gotta call the registry and just say, is one
Schedule
check okay
fees,
or,
yeah.
or 2?
No, on the thing, sorry. Sorry. That was not intentional. So according to their website, a $25 state L-chip surcharge fee and a separate check is due each.
Right, so it's 2 checks.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that means like, Madeline should have written 2 checks to the Stratford County Registry of Deeds. They could have been blank, we would have told them, or maybe it's the L-chip fee is one and the recording fee is the other, I don't.
Well, the other one would be to the town for the recording fee plus the flat fee to the town clerk for recording.
However it is, but yeah, but I think maybe the new policy ought to say what, how many checks and who they're made out to.
Yes.
Right,
And for what amount.
and
Yes.
at the time of submission,
It's a condition of the approval, I think, I mean,
Okay.
otherwise we're gonna lose checks, If
Yeah.
someone's holding on to them for 3 or 4 months while we review something.
good point.
They're probably gonna get lost.
Well, I would state the point that if it was something to be collected after the fact, then maybe the fee for sending some to the registry and recording it
At the same
could
time.
be collected at time of approval and when it's to be done, because I think that
And then if they're
if-
denied, then they don't pay.
if you collect anything
So-
up front that you don't have, that you don't address saying either it is forfeited or it'll be returned to you, I just think you leave yourself open if you collect fees that, like a recording fee for a plan that never needs to be recorded.
But
That's
we
still
also
my
need
money, you know?
noticing fees
Right.
regardless of whether they're denied.
Right. But
We do get, we get notice fees.
Well,
mean-
right, but that should be due, I think.
Oh,
when they're
those
heard.
fees, yes, I think
We
what
need to
Kevin
break
is.
it all down.
Yeah, so the recording fee and the administrative fee to cover those recording fees should be paid
Correct.
at the time of approval. The other fees have to be paid at the time of application.
So we
Absolutely.
know that the L-chip fee is $25, is that just
Is it per
standard?
page or is it per?
I don't know, that's what I'm wondering, so how do we know what the recording fee is?
It's kind of confusing from the website. So I think that L-chip surcharge is just a straight 25, but, so, and then they're saying all documents, there's $10, $4 each page, $2 surcharge. But then at the bottom, it says for plans, there are all these different pricings for sizes. Now, does that mean like if I submit 4 pages of 11 by 17 at $11.50 per page, that's the cost? Or
Yeah,
is
we
it-
don't ever, I mean, generally, I don't think we've ever approved an 11 by 17. That was probably 24 by 30, I
But
think.
I guess I'm asking which fees are we,
How would we know what to charge them?
yeah,
Well, that's why when I used to do it all the time, I always said I wanted a blank check, and then I'd fill it out when I got there, because I didn't want to have the wrong amount.
yeah,
So I would rather say a blank check made up to the Stratford County Registry of Deeds, you can fill it out, or whoever brings it there, and then they can tell them what the fee was.
And fees are subject to change through the course of
Yeah.
the project, so
Because not
it
every
may,
applicant.
we may get a ballpark that needs to be increased or decreased.
Wondering how many
based
people are
on
comfortable
page
with
size,
giving a
but
blank
that can be
check.
worked through the
We have
deals.
as many tables in the Stratford County Registry.
Right,
That's
right, no, no, I get that,
occur
but
to get
that's
through
what
the
practice
process,
is another
to begin the
town, people
process.
just-
Yeah.
well, they may add plan pages too, so. I mean,
Or we can put the onus on the applicant, a lot of times the applicant is represented by a surveyor or an engineer. If they wanna call and say, this is the size of plan that I have, what's the fee gonna be, and they can give you the check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, we can
Put it on them.
put the burden on them, that way they, if they don't wanna give you a blank check,
Well, because then that gets a little dicey
Well, then, I mean, it's not like.
They're giving you the wrong
It's not gonna be
number.
made payable to Sarah, it's gonna be made payable to the treasurer. Goes for deeds, so. But if people don't like doing that, then that's the way around it.
But if
And
there's a
then-
policy written up that described, that addressed each of these unique situations,
Yep.
then, I mean, it's a policy, we can look at the policy, right now it's not the case.
So who wants to draft a policy for review at the next meeting, so we can adopt it formally?
So I think that a representative of the planning board that frequents a select board meeting should discuss it with the select board regarding the town clerk's participation. And if that same person wants to draft said policy, I'd be okay with that.
Do we have one from another town that we can,
That's a good
I'm
idea.
wondering?
I think that
That's a good idea.
you can, or else that planning guidebook might have a sample copy of a
Yeah, they
procedure
might.
document that might include
Good
that
idea.
specific.
I mean, if you want me to write something up, they won't take very long, I'll just do it, but that'd be easier. I don't think they're gonna have anything specific in there.
John,
No,
want
but
to do that?
it's something that could be researched and found, I mean, it's a call to another town.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think a professional would be best.
Someone that could represent the select board in calling another town and saying, I'm representing the select board. I'd like to know about your policy.
The planning consultant's already volunteered, so we're thanking him for that.
Yep, I can do that.
Excellent.
And
But thank you, Mike. But I think we should do this, I mean, I just think, because this, and you're right, this is not the first time we've talked about this.
the other
And
big,
it would help admin side, it would help,
yeah,
prospective applicant side, it would
Yeah.
help us, planning board side.
I apologize, I didn't bring my notes from the writing and training. I have to find them, I think they're packed at the moment, but, everything else I know. He also mentioned, inaction around subdivisions. I'm drawing a blank at the phrase he used. What's it called? Basically, you have X amount of time to do X amount of work on a subdivision, or it reverts, you lose the plan. Now, I'm just having
I remember
a,
something
drawing a
like that.
blank, I can't remember what he called it.
You'd probably call it vesting.
Vesting, thank you, it is vesting, yeah. So are we able to create a vesting policy? Would that be part of, that would be part of the
I think,
subdivision, right?
yeah, I think we
right?
should, I think,
And we control that.
you control that, so you want me to, let me look at our subdivision regs and see if they adequately address vesting.
Okay.
And if they don't, I'll come up with some language, is that
And there
fair?
was one other large, there's a paper subdivision anyways, because there's several in this town, but there's one that I know of on Rollins Road, there's a house for sale on Rollins Road. And there's I don't know this because I sat next to the realtor that's representing them at a funeral a couple months ago. And she said, oh yeah, there's an approved subdivision with that. I said, oh, that's interesting. When was it done? And she rattled off some year and I don't remember it. I said, well, they've never done anything with it. But we don't have any policy that says that it wouldn't go away, you know? So, just because it could be a paper subdivision forever, I guess.
But wouldn't we also want to tie any new plans that come through with the vesting?
Yeah.
Well, you
It
wouldn't
would
be
be
able to do it
Yeah,
retroactively.
right across the
Right.
board,
Yeah, okay.
right across the board, everything expires due to inactivity.
Right.
It's recorded in our maps though, correct, as different
I don't know.
sublots?
But
I don't know.
let's just say someone does a Claude, what's his name? Gagnon, I don't know, has he done anything?
He's put a road in.
Oh, he did, okay. well,
So,
that's
yeah,
a bad
so
example.
that to
He
me, that would
gets
be.
a paper
the investment.
approval, doesn't do anything, just sits on it and 5 years goes by. The language, I think, that John Radigan was talking about, that Mike is talking about is after, let's say, 2 years, if no activity has taken place, then the approval lapses. If he puts the road in and makes a substantial improvement, there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay.
So.
In that case, I mean, they've cleared down there and he's doing.
Yes, and
work,
those
so-
lots are recorded and it
Sure,
has actually been subdivided, but I'm getting the impression from what you're saying about the person
Who
who's.
I don't know that it's actually, I didn't go and look at the
Okay,
tax map, but
Okay,
the impression that I got was it was just on paper.
that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, if you've subdivided the lots, and there's no activity.
If you never recorded it at the registry, then I guess it doesn't really exist, right?
But if you cut
How would we
away through
know?
the woods and put a big cul-de-sac in there and clear,
Oh, yeah, that's,
Stump
then you're
it
vested
and-
as far as I'm concerned.
I think then
Yeah.
you've started.
Of course you have.
Well,
You're
there's
6
been,
figures in
there's
it.
been a lot of court cases about what vesting is, and grubbing and stumping a road is not vesting.
Huh.
What the courts generally say is at least pavement, at least base coat, a base course of pavement.
Yeah.
But because, you know, someone can just go through the woods, cut trees and stump it and say, hey, I'm vested, well.
Sit on it for 10
So
years and
there's a-
sell it,
there's
because
a-
it's an approved plan.
There's a subdivision on Arch Street in Milford.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that-
One that goes
Yeah.
round
Right, is
Yeah.
it Elysium Fields or
I
something, whatever it's
do
called?
believe there's lots
What's his
available.
name?
by 16.
The guy that, you know,
Grant,
right,
isn't it? Is that him?
the guy that owns the gas station, the.
Oh, is that him? Okay,
You
he
know,
owns that too?
he
But he
owns
put a road in, and it is
It's
paved.
been sitting there for.
No, no,
I
but,
think,
but.
I think there's still lots available.
There's nothing-
Probably
Every
all.
one of them.
Every single one of them.
Every one of them.
But my point, my question was gonna be, so would that be considered being vested because he put in a road that would bind her? I don't,
He did.
he did, yeah, I mean, I
There's
don't.
Part of
curbing,
it's
there's
paved,
curbing.
it's not completely paved for all the lots, but there's an access, paved access.
And when I drove by the other morning going to work.
You had to
people
sort of
mowing,
evaluate, you know,
they're
what's the co-
maintaining it.
You know, what would be, in a typical subdivision, we'd have a cost estimate, let's say the road cost $600,000, if he did 50,000, you'd say, nah, it doesn't pass.
Okay, all right.
But in that case, I don't know what was required, so.
I still think you're talking difference from someone that doesn't even mow the place down, period, versus what's happened when he's cleared and brought in gravel and underlay in his road. That's quite a difference from someone who's starting a
Oh,
plan.
and in this case, Mr. Gagner's advertising a house for sale.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
I didn't, mean to- I only used him as an example.
No, but that's the most
No, but I
recent
agree
one,
with you. I
so.
mean, it's a case-by-case thing, I guess, but at least there's guidelines to fall back on. Right now, there's not even guidelines.
Yeah, we don't, there's nothing on regs, so.
So if, in like Gagnon's case, where there are 4 lots back there, whatever there are, that's been recorded, they're separate lots, you're saying after 2 years, if he did nothing, it would revert back to a whole lot? Or,
Well, I think we have to have language, we
Okay.
have to have language in our subdivision regulations that after X number of days, years, months, if substantial improvement hasn't taken place, then the planning board would take an action to revoke the approval. I think we'd actually have to have a formal revocation. It wouldn't just
it
automatically
just doesn't
lapse.
go away?
Although and I'm not an expert with zoning variances, although I'm on the zoning board in my town. Variances do have a shelf life, and I don't know what they do.
would not
I don't
know
know,
my
maybe a year, I can't remember, 2 years, something like that. I should guess I
They don't
should
last
know.
forever though.
They don't last forever. If you don't do
You have to.
something, you lose them.
Right.
And that's automatic, you don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But with this, it's different, because there's some sort of a measurement that the board would have to.
But as part of the approval, you could determine what the buy-in commitment degree is. Maybe it is pavement, maybe it is,
Well-
you know, if someone does these 4 lots and does nothing but sells the middle one, you can't revoke that approval.
Right.
There's a lot in the middle, it's been
You're gonna think I'm
sold.
crazy, but was it Dover or the apartment approval? That was in Rollinsford, up
Yeah.
behind Wendy's,
Behind the,
and that's gone, right? That
Well,
approval
the
lapsed.
ultimate plan, I think, was the whole protect the bunny thing to begin with.
No.
No,
This is
you're talking about South Zone.
Expansion of the apartment.
No,
the bowling alley.
You know where,
Yeah.
where
Granite
Wendy's is?
Village.
Granite Village.
Yes,
That approval's lapsed. They got an approval to expand
For an
that.
additional back
Yeah,
development.
They never built it.
And they never built it, so that one's gone, and now they can't.
You're right.
So, that one, and they spent, I think they spent a fair amount of time and money trying to figure it out, but, I think if it was a substantial subdivision, 10, 15, 20 lots, the applicant came to us in a year and said, geez, the economy fell apart, you might say, oh, can we have another year? You might say, yeah, sure, we don't want to go through this whole review again. And that's typically what happens, someone doesn't go through the pain and suffering of engineering and surveying a subdivision and only to say, I'm done. It rarely happens.
There could be a case-by-case review component to everything.
Sure.
Like if somebody died in the middle of it and it's cut up and probate.
Yeah, Right. I mean, there are unique situations.
Is there still a paper subdivision behind, like the new Woof Meow, back in there off Howe Street? That's
Hall Street.
Howe, I think it's off.
Those are all separate lots still.
Yeah.
You know, it's underwater now, I think.
It's not, well, some of it is very wet and unbuildable.
Those lots are all sold to individual people?
No, the town owns them, they're all individual lots.
Okay, okay.
Hmm.
With no development.
There are some houses out there, but it's, a very small percentage of all the lots that are out there.
Right, because, I mean, it used to be a whole infrastructure. Oh, well, the paper exists for a whole infrastructure, okay.
And if you look online at our tax maps, you can see,
Mhm.
you
They're
know.
like light gray though, they're pretty faint lines, yeah.
Well, yeah, but
They
there are
don't mean
lots of
much.
teeny little dots for different lots all back there.
It is
There's
actually
town
not.
property.
It is
Town took
town
it back,
property,
yeah.
yeah.
Has been.
So that's
Was
two
there anything
things.
else? I apologize, I don't have my notes.
Well, we've been talking about doing this sort of a workshop on other things, and the only other thing I'd like to, at least, if we're gonna, the next meeting, I'm not sure if Dane or Lynch is gonna make it in.
Yeah.
He's gonna try.
He's gonna try for jailbird, which shouldn't be that
Oh,
Is
okay.
that the?
lengthy of a review.
It's the end.
What,
There's a lot
just-
I mean, the plans are about that thick, because I've got them in my office, but, it's not that complicated.
There's
My point is if we have time for a work session afterwards.
There's another case. Paul
Okay.
Larian.
Tharian will be in, the Silver Street subdivision will be in. For other
The guy
projects.
wanted to take one lot and make
That, is it or isn't it a
two
top
funny
or
shapes.
top? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know when, then we'll have time to do this, but the other, there's a couple things I've been sort of keeping tabs on. You know, one of the things, one thing that did come up, and it was a shock to everybody, was the duplexes in the Gagnon subdivision. And, you know, we do need to allow a variety of housing types in town. We can't just say everything's gonna be, you know, on 2 acres. But there may be places in town that duplexes aren't appropriate. So I don't know if that's worthy of discussion, but it came up, it was a shock to everybody. So that's one thing I think we maybe wanna talk about. I think that, in my opinion, the Blue and Mill, was a disaster. I don't think the zoning is great. I think we gotta maybe retool that, and I don't think there's any urgency. It can happen later, but I think that's something we ought to talk about is density, because I think the zoning board really struggled with how to deal with that thing.
What is the status of it?
Well, they finally got their approval.
Oh, they did.
It was just, you know,
Yeah, we created a hoop that didn't need to be
it
jumped.
didn't need to be there. That's one thing. And then the other thing that, you know, we've talked about sort of on and off for a few years is, Pat was a big proponent of trying to broaden the tax base.
Mhm.
And as a board, we've talked about how to do it. The first step we did was to allow residential units in the mills, which I think, you know, I don't know, we'll see how that goes. And then the other one was Oak Street and rezoning the Rollinsford side of Oak Street. I know that someone tried to get a variance for the
It was gonna,
storage on that, in that house right on the railroad track.
That-
And they got
There are
denied.
2 teeny lots.
They
right
got
there.
denied.
Right on the railroad, it's dirty,
But-
it's dirty land.
I'm just thinking, you know, I mean,
It's not
again, I don't live here, I drive down the Oak Street 5 times a day though. You know, I wouldn't wanna live there, it's getting busy. That may be one opportunity for some commercial. I don't know how far back, you know, hitting Route 4. But I don't know if it's worth discussing that. I don't know if there's any interest at all.
I think there's a lot of interest because every time you go to town meeting, people say our tax rate is too high and we need to, you know, create a commercial base.
It ain't gonna go down Route 4, I know that.
Right.
You know, cause everybody
So-
says that's sacred.
Exactly,
But,
so what I think would be really cool and a bit out of the box is getting Plannng New Hampshire in here to do a charrette and talk to the residents and everybody and see how
Yeah, that
people
would be-
wanna look at that.
And it's,
You're
you know,
right, I mean,
and I don't know
some
how
people
far
say
back off
enforcement.
Oak Street it should go, but I mean, you know, 200 feet isn't gonna do it. I mean, if you went back 500 feet and then, I don't know how far down Taylor Reynolds, maybe you pick that up, it's sort of, you know, that chunk could be commercial. It would have to be big enough to allow something viable.
Well, keep in mind, you have limits by that posted bridge.
I understand.
I
Well, you can
think
cut
that's
from the
gonna
other
cover
end.
it somewhat.
Coming from
But that's the onus of the developer.
But if you're looking at ways to broaden your tax base, that's probably the only place you've got. I mean, I think you've probably done everything you can in the down here. And until something changes with the ownership in the mills or the,
It's Route 4, I mean,
but Route 4
it's
isn't
the
the
white elephant.
It's not the white elephant, I think it's the sacred cow, you know, I
It's the
don't,
elephant in the room, that's where people drive.
Yeah.
You could do like the tail end of
I don't
Route
want,
4
you
where
know,
Cumbies is, right before you go over the bridge, and just allow like a small area on both sides since Cumbies is there anyway.
Slippery slope, I think,
Yeah.
slippery slope. The other thing about Oak Street is I was on the zoning board for that, or still on the zoning board for that self-storage, and, you know, a lot of residents on Oak Street say they're basically taking their lives in their hands,
Oh, yeah.
getting in and out of there. And you have to think about putting in commercial establishments there, increasing traffic flow, and people coming in and out of there. I think that's a decision not to be made lightly, because,
no, you know. And I'm not saying, all I'm saying is that I've heard for years that the town needs to diversify its tax base, and where else are you gonna do it? I mean, that seems to me to be the only logical place. You know, if this was other towns, you'd go right down to Route 4, but it's not gonna happen, so. I don't
If
know
that was
where else-
zoned as change zoning, I think there'd be very little, if that was all zoned for residential, commercial development, I think you see a lot of houses on that go away real quick. I mean, I think there'd be very little residents down
Well,
there.
one just sold recently.
On the left, yeah,
On the
side of the road,
okay.
I think.
I mean, well, there's some classic old family houses, I understand that too, but you would be increasing traffic twofold, even at 4 and then even at, you know, the Foss side, the Goss side.
I mean, Oak Street traffic is brutal, I don't know, I mean, self-storage, I don't know how much of it adds to it, I mean, it's wall-to-wall traffic every day, but,
Yeah, that road gets pounded, I mean, they're always fixing that road, and that bridge, I mean, it's just a horrible.
Yeah, I've avoided it at all costs.
so that's all I had, but I mean, those are things we've been talking about,
Yep.
really haven't done much about, so I just don't, you know, if we could put those sort of on the radar, and, you know, I'll work on the vesting language and the policy regarding recording plans.
Yep.
And maybe, it sounds like the next meeting may be a little heavier
Yeah,
with thought,
it
so.
There's an issue that came up at the select board, well, last night, it's going for a previous meeting, about signing off on building permits. Our zoning regulations, the zoning ordinance requires the select board to sign off on them. Is that common in most towns? It's not?
Well, it is up, like, I'm not trying to be insulting to Wallingford, probably north of maybe the Lakes region, it's
It's a
common.
very, very small town.
Yes, where they don't have full-time building inspectors,
Right.
but most towns that have building code enforcement officials, they
They
do
handle it?
They handle it. So, yeah, but you're an oddity in the sense that you're small, you're small, but but you're stuck in this area. You know, if Tom Clark if you feel comfortable with him, or whoever his predecessor is, doing it, you could always relinquish your duties to him, or to her, or whoever
Right,
it
right,
is.
right.
But it's unusual, most select boards do not.
Do not
sign.
do anything on
No,
them?
no.
That's good enough. Would there be a reason to keep the authority with the select board?
It's a check and balance, I mean, I'm sure, the select board has made mistakes, I feel,
I'm sure we probably have.
well, with, Mick, that was a big one,
Yeah.
and the Mick
It was my
construction.
first year on the board.
Well, but Tom, whoever is the building official could make a mistake too.
Sure.
As long as you have a qualified person in that position, I think they could probably do a pretty good job.
Right.
Um,
I mean, currently, we have Tom Clark reviews all the building permits, and I'm not necessarily advocating to doing away with the select board oversight, it's not coming from me, but there's a valid point is made that, I mean, we just sign off on it after he reviews them, we don't.
Well, I'll tell you, most of you know me, I live in the Lake Region. For 9 years, I was a selectman in my town. For 7 of those years, I was a test pit witness for new septic systems. I gotta say, all I did was go out there.
We signed off on them
And the
too.
policy was, they gave us $50 cash.
Yeah.
I'd go out on a Saturday, sometimes do 5 or 6 of them, pick up a couple $100. And I look on the whole and say, yeah, it looks good. Finally, I said, this is ridiculous, what do I know?
Right.
So we got rid of
We
the
have-
policy.
We have,
You know, it
we
was
have Clark
abs-
review all the septic designs,
Right.
I don't know.
Well, right, so, you know, I would think that a select board in Rollinsford would probably have enough to do without signing off on building permits if you had a, you know, a good professional dealing with
Okay.
that. So, you know, I think if you felt comfortable.
We would have to change our zoning ordinance,
Yeah,
that's the only
yeah.
thing, so. I mean, So,
And I think it's cumbersome, you know, for people that have to come
Yeah,
and sit before the
okay.
select board to get a building permit.
so the other part of that though is, and it probably could be solved just with a policy change. You know. Could be a subsection, the building inspector signs off on building permits unless there's an issue with Class 6 roads, for instance. I mean, we are the final say on whether or not we will issue a building permit on a Class 6 road, and we don't have to give any reason for or against. Just, nope, we don't wanna do it, or yes, we do it. That's the only thing I could think of, at least last night, why we would wanna retain our authority to keep signing off on them. But I mean, I guess.
But the statute's real clear with Class 6 roads, so you know, Tom, it would, you know, or whoever, the building
would just
official
say,
wouldn't have the
gotta go
authority
select
to issue a permit anyway. So if you relinquish your rights to the building official, you're not relinquishing that.
That right, okay.
You'd
Right,
preserve
fair
that.
enough.
So I think
Okay,
you'd be.
you may
safe
be
there.
convincing me.
Well, again,
I've been,
I
I've been the one who doesn't wanna relinquish control, so.
I just know what it's like to do all the crap you guys have to do, and if you can get one thing off your plate, it might make your life easier, you know, so.
Maybe, okay.
I don't know.
So I think there was another policy procedure related item with the application process, because things were kind of getting,
The only, something that would be handy to have in writing that I rely on Sarah for is when applications are due for the following
Yeah.
meeting. If we can have that in writing somewhere, since it's all governed by the noticing requirement,
Yep.
it should be easy to
we
say.
should be able to pop a calendar on the website even, like.
Or something, but so
Deadline.
that I don't have to not know all the time, because I don't know.
Yep.
Because there are more than one different deadlines for different types of
Well, and because I've,
events.
The noticing and.
So standard, like, you have to have an application 20 days before
Yeah.
a meeting in order for it to be put on the agenda. A complete application.
so if we have that in writing somewhere, that would be good. I don't know if it is part of,
It's part of some, I don't know.
Something
yeah.
So Mike had mentioned to me that there used to be a procedure, a planning board procedure document somewhere.
There was.
I have not seen it,
I haven't seen it in years either. I don't know where it is or who has it.
because he claims that all that kind of stuff is on that
No, if we
document.
could get our hands on that, that would be
That'd be fabulous.
swell.
He doesn't have a copy.
Claims to have it
He
somewhere.
claims to have a copy.
Who knows?
Yeah, find it. The one thing I would say is I don't like having calendars. I'd rather have a notice or just something for anybody that's front desk to hand out to people saying that the planning board
Yes.
generally meets on whenever we meet.
First
Second-
Tuesday.
First
It's usually
Tuesday.
the first, yep.
Because the zoning board I'm in, I'm a member of, every year, our town administrator prints a calendar of when our meetings are, it's the third Tuesday of the month. And then if we wanna change it, it just causes, it causes problems, because this thing's been circulated, all around town, so. I'd rather just have you say 20 days before the meeting, and the meetings are subject to change, I mean, we changed tonight.
This,
July,
tonight,
yeah.
we moved out
So-
a week.
that would be good.
And if you could ask Mike to find this policy thing.
Bet you can find it for us.
Do you
I'll come
imagine?
over.
Well, he had a laptop at one time that died, and a lot of information died on that laptop, I know
There was a
that.
memory,
I don't know what it was, but I know a lot of it went away with that.
but he found this site and subdivision things for me when it was commissioned forever. I mean, when he
Had
found
time.
them. So I'll ask him again.
Yeah, depending on the age, the date of it, I mean, some things may be outdated. Does any of that ever change requirements like that?
No.
No, that's all
Not in
controlled by the
years.
state, right? Controlled by
Not in
the
years,
state
yeah.
government.
Yes.
Well, we don't go by the state, we had some time to it because this is a small town, but we could compress it a little bit if we wanted to, but it's more, 20 days is good.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anything else to discuss?
Oh, Claude, again, I got a call from Chris Parker. Is he making changes to that subdivision?
I heard rumblings that they intended to, but I have not
Okay. 'Cause
spoken
Chris
to anybody
um,
about that.
Chris Berry called me and said, he said he was gonna file a plan, he wanted me to, he wanted to know what we would require to convert those to single-family houses. I said, I think we've gotta be tickled pink. So, but then I haven't
That
heard
was
another
a
one.
couple of months ago, right?
It was probably 2 months ago when I heard from him.
I would imagine this board would probably look favorably upon.
Right, that's what I said, I didn't think it would be a hard sell.
The one he has for sale is a single family home.
Yeah,
It's a-
yeah.
it's,
I've seen the listing,
um,
I'm familiar with it.
yeah. There's no house, but.
No, I know, I'm familiar with all the listings in town.
Yeah. I've been there. Yes, I know. All right. Anything else? You were about to say something? Didn't?
Yes, no, that's why I got my calendar up, so we're still planning on, the first Tuesday in August, right?
I won't be here for that
I think it's the seventh.
Yeah.
I won't be here for that meeting.
What is this Tuesday?
Seven.
The seventh?
Okay, so can we, change it to the 14th then, so more people can be here?
I wouldn't have a problem with
I have no problem with that.
Same here.
Is everyone good with the 14th? Okay,
Yes. John, does it work for you? Because you're the,
I don't have my calendar, but I'm sure it does.
okay.
14th?
It'll
work my calendar right now.
that. You said,
14th of when? August?
CJ will be on the agenda for next.
August already, coming up.
C&J,
CJ
Tarion,
Hall, the Silver Street
Tarion.
subdivision.
Yeah.
and possibly, or
There it is.
Summersworth Road, probably not.
I have no idea. They have
I
not
have
been
not heard
communicating.
It's been quiet on that,
What's that?
Somersworth Road has not
Somersworth Road.
been communicating. We don't know what will be on the agenda for August.
Pepin Turgeon.
The select board
So they're
is not issuing any building permit. They can come here all they want. But
Okay,
if they need any building permits, they're not getting anything until the other requirements from the last set of plans
right.
is taken care of.
sounds good.
That's how we're gonna enforce that rule. I don't know how else we do it.
So,
We tell
this
people
is an
that- we tell
instance
people
where
they're
retaining
supposed
your
to,
right to.
they're supposed to meet certain requirements.
Yes.
These were conditions that had to have been met, and now they're coming with a whole other set of plans on the same lot, or? I don't
That's a
think
good
so.
point of what we were talking about earlier, just to see things that actually do happen. You have to police the year out and the 2 year.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're
things.
charged with actually enforcing it, right?
Well,
Making sure
right,
that-
so who would be that person to monitor whether or not somebody's vested, a year or 2 years after something's approved?
Well, why
Or
would
if
it
they're
be-
following through with whatever the
Why
conditions
why
are.
would it be drafted, why should we, if we get to this language, it be drafted such that the board has a responsibility, that the applicant has, it automatically expires, it's the applicant's responsibility to come in and, take care of, otherwise it automatically disappears without substantial
Two
work.
separate things.
And we're talking about promises
So, yes.
that they made being
I see.
completed.
I'm
They're not
sorry,
always gonna come up and wanna
I
modify
apologize for
a
misunderstanding.
previously approved plan that hasn't even happened yet.
Yes.
I mean, like, so, for instance, Paul Miller across the street, the garage, right?
Mhm.
There were certain conditions about not storing things,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
the neighbors have not been shy about coming to the select board and reminding us that those were conditions, and we have to go and remind him every once in a while, he's not supposed to keep things there.
But he's on public display versus.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
we know
but
what's
still,
happening.
it's our responsibility, and it's easy to handle that, I guess is my larger point, but there are other things that we don't always know, and then when cases like Somersworth Road come up, this is how I think we have to handle it, we don't
I'm a
do
big
anything else until.
Fan of putting it in someone else's hands and trying to ease the burden of the select board. I think that's,
Me too.
yeah, everything we know, but realistically, if we put everything on
Right.
applicants, and if we can collect fees to get things that need to be done, so we can pay a town employee a little something to run to, across county road or something. But it would be, sure, we can just say, well, the select board, or someone has to go out, but that becomes costly too.
Yep.
And people's time is worth something.
Right.
We're not doing it right if we just put more work on ourselves.
There's one other thing, in the interest of full disclosure, Carolyn and I have been communicating about approaching the select board to get some funding to address the mess in the planning room, by either storing, maybe you have.
Well, so really, I'm not sure what the remediation is, but we've been kerfuffled repeatedly by requests for information that we cannot fulfill because we don't know where our documents are.
Like digital copies of things? and-
So that would be ideal, is to digitize everything, but it would make sense if we're gonna do that, that we proceed from that point on in a digital manner so that we're not incurring paper after everything else has been digitized.
So John, do communities require digital copies of things too, or?
Generally not, you know, even the city of Portsmouth put Dover, they're paper.
They're all done on still?
Map and lot, you know, they
So
have
then maybe
paper
it's a
files.
periodic expense.
Now, plans often are digitized, but like, there's, you know, you look at the plans you're gonna get for C&J, which I think is a pretty small project. I bet you there's 25 pages in the plan, so
Oh,
there's a drainage analysis, there's this, that. Now, you could ask, that's obviously a PDF, you could probably get that digitally. But most towns and cities still file everything on, you know, paper. But the problem for us is, that's just, that everything just goes in there, and there hasn't been an organization.
But isn't it our responsibility to
And Pat
provide
wanted
this
to have,
information?
Pat's idea was to have like a couple of nights when we have a pizza party in there, and everybody sits there and shuffles paper, but I think that's a more serious problem.
It's a way more serious issue,
And I-
because
you know-
people have tried and then left it, and then tried and then left it.
And I don't even know how it's filed, is it by
Well,
owner's name or by
It
parcel?
was done by year and then owner's name,
Which
and
is
that's
awful.
awful.
Yeah,
So you
everything's
can't
gotta be
find
map and
lot, so
Yeah,
it just needs attention, whatever.
You two are gonna try to devise a plan and get a grant, that's perfect, okay.
But that's required, right? I mean, is it required that we be able to provide information upon request to people?
Theoretically,
required that
Right,
you-
isn't it?
it's
No,
not-
I mean,
it's not-
don't-
it's
aren't
required
we
that you-
failing our
It's
responsibilities
well-
here? I don't know.
Sure, but it's required that you provide information that's requested. If someone comes in and says, I wanna see the C&J file for this application, we've gotta be able to provide it. The reality is, you know, you could say, we suck at record.
Yeah, if we don't have.
That's what I say
We've
weekly.
dropped the ball, we're sorry. We
Go to the
can't-
registry,
We
you
can't, they can go to the registry, pull plans, if you wanna look at, you know, submittals that came in with stuff, we may not be able to help you, we're sorry. Someone could sue you, you'd end up at Superior Court.
Well, that's what I look at, is all possibilities. I
If
mean,
you're a person
like
saying,
they
Rollinsford,
happen,
you suck, you know, get your act together, then you know, what can you do? The horse left the barn a long time ago. I think moving forward, you know, you only hit your thumb so many times before you realize you can't keep doing it. So I do, and we've been talking about this for years. I mean, for 10 years, it's been going on. So, but the problem is you can't just hire someone from labor ready to go in there and say, hey, go
Well,
in there
there
for
needs
8
to be
hours.
someone with knowledge.
They need to know names,
Just
because
be
if
advised
it's
them
filed
how
by
to-
name, they gotta be able to figure out what the hell map and parcels it goes to. So, and I don't know who, you know, and you're talking about, I bet you're talking about months and months of time. That's,
Unless you could take everything
that's
out of
the
that room
reality of it.
and use the gym over at the grade school and lay it all
Lay it
out.
all out.
but again, you need to have someone with institutional knowledge of, who is.
And there are
this-
duplicate sets of plans, and which one is the real one, and how many do we really need, and which ones can be folded, and we don't have flat drawer space for all of them.
But like you're saying, that can all be done for a cost. There's companies and people that will do that to our specifications, everything, if we're willing to pay for
Yes,
it.
well, and what I would like to
Absolutely.
see, and I don't know what the
But that
cost
costs money, right?
is digitizing, and then we do it periodically, there's an annual cost for whatever happened that year, we get it digitized.
Before going, it's so much easier if everything's
So let
digital.
me ask you this, so the Cambo Wentworth subdivision that just happened, this evening, lot line adjustment. What are you gonna do with those two sets of documents there?
I'm gonna give one to Andrea, and I'm going to,
File
So
in
this
the
gets,
She has
this is
one.
every case that, or
That's how we're doing
applicant.
it now.
Yes, and this is
Okay.
just how you did it. I'm only copying what has been done for
Okay,
going back 10 years at least.
okay.
I changed this a little bit because I make labels now that have the date and tax and lot before everything else.
Just by name.
So it's easier to flip through them.
And where do we store them?
There's a filing cabinet.
Okay.
It's not a great,
In envelopes like that?
yeah,
Okay.
so every document,
But
like
they're-
in here I have
But they're
like,
more searchable because they're by the tax map, the lot, the lot number.
you have to know the
The
year.
new ones,
Yes,
you have to know the year.
yes. I mean, the older ones, I think have tax map and lot too, but.
I don't think anything's left in those drawers. I think pretty much everything got pulled out because we've had a couple of earnest volunteers who get
No,
half days into it and then they, no, you have.
not the stuff that I file, that's not been pulled.
Well, and the other thing, not to complicate it, but really, it'd be nice to have a central filing room, like where zoning board stuff goes in, because, you know, someone wants to
The
pull a.
zoning board is the filing cabinet next door.
I'm just saying that, you know, it's not, the way it should work, in like the sleepy little town I live in, with under 1,000 people, we have one file on every property. If you've got a variance, if you've got a special exception, it's in that file. If you got a building permit, it's in there. If there's an enforcement action, there's a notice in there. A subdivision plan would be in there. So it's
How
all.
do you do it though, like, I mean, some of those files can get pretty big. I mean, how do you adjust
The
it?
average property file might be yay thick.
Well,
you
so
have-
what do you do with like the C and J that might have
you
25
pull apart
pages
the-
of really,
Well,
you know,
it's something
big-
like something like that, you know, you could either have a rolled file where you know, they make, you can buy the
categorize
staples,
them,
you know,
yeah.
with, I don't know, 12 or 14, you know, tubes, and you can say it would be an A1 of this
Make a
file.
note of it.
Or, and that's unusual to get a plan set like that, or you can just pull them apart and
all them
pull,
individually, yeah.
which, you know, if it's 10 sheets, that's not that hard. You know, but our average plan set's probably 3 pages. So on occasion, when you get a 20-page plan set, I would just pull it apart, fold each page and put it in there with a binder clip on it.
Something to think about.
Because the
think
more,
that you
the
would
more
have to-
chances you know, to separate stuff, the more you're gonna lose it, you know? I agree with that. And flat files suck because they take up so much room,
They do,
you know?
yes,
And then you can't go through them because the plans are so heavy.
yes.
So I personally, I think, for the few times you have you know, a multi-page plan set, pull the damn thing apart and fold them.
Okay, so that's a,
Now you just gotta find someone.
well, use our basement once the police move out, have flood,
One step at a time, yeah.
total joke. All right, at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none? Thank you all for your kind attention.
Bring the whole crap you look like your father, tell me you're the one now.
Well, the wife is gonna run for, yeah, state rep